Okay, so good morning. This is Katie Englert, and I'm here with Kim Beck. Kim is the owner of Practice Navigation Solutions, and I have known Kim for kind of a long time right now.
Yeah, quite a long time.
And she is a professional. She has a lot of experience in private practice and billing. But today I wanted to talk with her and give us some of her wisdom around billing and coding. So, Kim, do you want to tell us a little bit about your business?
Yes, I have Practice Navigation Solutions. Like you said, I've been doing this type of work for at least 20 years. Billing, providing setup for providers that are interested in starting their own business, contracting, credentialing, some light bookkeeping, virtual assistants, all those types of services. My passion is to help providers so that clients can receive the services that they so desperately need. So that's why I started my business. It is growing. I have added some team members to the staff, so I'm really excited about that.
Yeah, I think you credentialed me for my first insurance panel, like way back in the day, for a place I didn't even end up working for.
Yeah, and that happens sometimes. You just kind of have to find out where you belong, and we just make adjustments from there.
Yeah, we moved unexpectedly. So that's kind
Yeah,
of one of the things that happened there. So, well, cool.
yeah,
So we're kind of in uncharted waters here and we're getting our bearings about us. This is not the end all be all of each individual person, but we want you to talk to us a little bit about telehealth and billing that, and maybe some pointers and tips for that. So I thought we would talk about codes that we bill first. So does anything really change about codes that we would typically bill?
No, as far as the codes go, they're the same codes, same 90791, same 90832, all that's the same. Nothing changes there. The only thing that does change is the modifiers, and those are by payer. Some require the GT modifier, some require the 95 modifier. And I can send you a list of those so you can post those along with the information by payer. And then, of course, the place of service changes to an O2 code.
Right. In our system, the O2, because we use electronic health records, so
Mhm.
in our system, it's called location. So that
Right.
actually changes, and we have a specific location for telehealth. But if you are using like paper claims, so if you're still submitting something
Yes.
like a CMS 1500,
Right.
then you would use the place of service as what is the number?
02.
02. Okay. And so we use the same codes that we typically bill for our in-person sessions. Now, what about those modifiers? Because some of us use modifiers in different ways.
Mm-hmm.
I'm especially thinking about for Kentucky Medicaid, um, or I guess Medicaid in general. So would you add the modifier for telehealth? What's the placement that you would recommend for that? And let's start with that question.
Okay, so if you're billing just one service, like a 90837, and it's just going to be that one service, then you would add either the GT or 95 after that, directly after that service in your system. If you're billing an additional code, say maybe an interactive complexity, the 90785, what you want to put on there is the main code, which would be the face or the interactive code, the 9083732, whatever you're billing based on the level, the time of service that you're providing. And then you would put the 59 modifier on there. So you're appending that code to say you're providing a separate, distinct service in addition to this one, and you would add on the interactive complexity. Then you would add the GT or 95 modifier depending on the insurance company, what their expectations and requirements are at this time.
So what about, go ahead.
Sorry. Those are changing. Initially they were saying that some needed certain modifiers. So I want to make sure I get you the most updated list on that. I'll go back out to the payers' websites and pull that information again and send that just one more time to make sure that we have what is accurate as of today. because things do change quite rapidly with this situation. So you want to make sure that if you're adding the interactive complexity modifier, the 90785, that you're actually getting assistance from someone other than the client, that they're actually assisting them. If it's a younger person and they're just not able to focus, if you're having a situation where you have an older person and they're not able to manage the communication method, you're assisting them. So you would only want to add that if you are providing some additional assistance to the client, not on all services.
Okay, that's great. That's great information. So what I'm hearing, because I'm going to repeat this back to you because I'm a therapist. So
Okay.
what I'm hearing is that we add the telehealth modifier after any other modifier we would add. So if we have to add any kind of modifier to our billing code, the telehealth modifier goes last.
Yes, if you're providing more than one service. Of
Okay.
course, if you're providing just one service, you just put the telehealth modifier on there.
Okay, but then commercial and Medicaid have different requirements for adding a modifier every time. So
they don't have necessarily different requirements in regard to the location of the modifier, which one comes first. It's just what is required if it's a 95 or the GT.
Okay. What about where you have to identify your provider education level?
That is going to be yes, that's another one. I'm sorry. I always think about an LCSW just providing the service. Of course, a lot of times people will render the service under the supervision of the LCSW or highest level practitioner in the organization. Mm-hmm. So yes, all right. So let's start again. Sorry.
Okay. No.
So we have we're just going to use 90837 as an example. 90837. Then we would put the level of the clinician.
Okay.
We would put, if you're appending that to add an additional service, you would add the 95, or I'm sorry, the 59, all these numbers, the 59, then you would add the GT or 95 modifier depending on the payer.
Okay, so it would be first, in the first box for 90837 would be your level of experience of the provider rendering the service.
Correct.
Second box, depending on if it was more than one code being billed at a time, you would put
Correct.
the 59 modifier if
Correct.
you needed it. Then in the third box, you would put the telehealth modifier if that's required.
That's correct.
Okay, just making sure. I have to, how I have to process through things here. And
no,
make
that's
sure
perfect.
I got it.
Thank you.
Okay, and so then I heard you say that if you're using an add-on code, specifically you mentioned the 90785, which is the interactive complexity add-on code.
Yes.
We're not just blanket adding that to things. That's not appropriate.
No, it is not appropriate.
Okay.
So what could happen is they may initially pay the charge. Insurance may just pay the charge, but what happens is they can go up to, quite some time. I have seen them go back as far as a year and review and audit claims. So you're going to see a lot of claim auditing by insurance. Even though they initially pay those charges, they will go back eventually and audit the situation. I know they're being more lenient in that situation, because of the pandemic, but just be aware that if you're billing services and your notes do not accurately identify that was a separate needed service, they can recoup that money. Obviously, they don't pay that much on that particular code, but my fear is that if that triggers a recoupment possibly, so the insurance company could take money back, then that could trigger even a larger audit on your organization. So you want to be very careful that you are applying those codes, the additional codes appropriately, and that you are you're adding enough information into your note to support that you build those codes.
Yeah, I love that advice, because a lot of times the people that I work with are individuals, or smaller groups. So they're not the big organizations, they are smaller. And so that's really great information. So we've talked about modifiers, we've talked about codes, and we've talked about the add-on code. And we've talked about location and place of service. So the next question that I have for you is about who can bill for telehealth.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
no, my understanding is that it depends on the payer, and it depends on your contract, and it depends on
Right.
your education level and license. Is that true?
That is true somewhat. Of course, they are being, again, more lenient in this situation because people need the services. And typically, providers that would normally not be able to bill via telehealth are able to do so right now. I know they're allowing services across state lines right now. This is, again, only during this pandemic. So, things will revert, things will change, they will adjust back once we are able to get out and about again and get back into our offices. So you want to be careful to make sure that you're getting the most updated information. Again, I'll supply you, try to go out and supply you with the link to the websites that's appropriate to get updated information for each of the MCOs, the insurance companies in the state of Kentucky. Some of the higher paying or larger population insurance companies. If there's additional ones, you can let me know and I can get that information together for you. But yes, they are relaxing some of the requirements in regard to who can render those services. So
Okay.
I also provide that in a table for you.
Okay, cool. So we know that that's kind of relaxed. We know that we can apply, or we can, there are a lot of relaxed rules right now that are not typical across the board. And that's from HIPAA to where you can practice,
Yes.
to who can offer telehealth services, and how you can deliver telehealth services.
That's
So
correct.
typically in the state of Kentucky, we know that it has to be a HIPAA compliant, secure platform, and it has to be live video and audio chat. So right now there's a lot of questions about if technology fails or if technology is not available. So we're getting a lot of questions about phone. What do you know about that?
I do know that they are allowing that. They have relaxed that regulation. So phone is an acceptable means of communication. If a person's in a rural area, they're not able to, or they don't have a computer, they just don't have the technology to be able to do certain types of services. So phone is available right now.
So is there anything special about billing that to payers, or is the modifier that you use, is it just included in the telehealth specifics?
It's just included.
Okay.
It's just included. As far as all the reading that I've done and all the information that again, it changes regularly. So I do know that they are not going to fine you if they do come in and do an audit and they find that certain things were not exactly as they would have liked for them to be. And I say them, I mean each insurance company and the OIG. They're stating that if they come in and end up doing a review of your charts during this time period, they're not going to fine organizations and agencies for services that are not typical telehealth type services.
Right. And is this across the board, or is this a Kentucky rule?
I've seen a lot of it in a lot of different states. So my understanding is because of what President Trump has said, they are relaxing that across the states.
Okay. So we've talked a lot about method billing. I want to jump into what you know about verification of benefits and insurance. So we're going to kind of shift gears into that.
Okay.
I know that this is not going to be a super long chat here, but we're just wanting to get some super basics out to people so they know where to start. So what would your recommendation be about, because we always, in my practice and with people I work with, we always talk about the importance of verifying benefits and making sure that it's current and accurate. What would you suggest about that during this time?
First thing I would say is make sure your contract has the telemedicine addendum to the contract. I know, once they relaxed all that changed a few years ago. Most of them just automatically included it. What I would make sure is, though, that it is included, that it's not an exclusion of the person, and I'm talking about the individual's plan. So when you call the insurance company, you need to make sure that and itself has the telehealth benefit on it. If it doesn't, then I would recommend that that person go back to the HR department at their company, contact them, let them know that it's not an added benefit on the plan, that they verified that, or your front desk, whoever's managing that. They need to communicate that with the patient, let them know that's not a benefit on my plan, but I need that to be available. So they can get that added, or they can make an arrangement with the provider to provide those services during this pandemic. So that would be my first thing to do is, one, check with your insurance company with your contract, make sure that it's part of your contract. Two, benefits on each of your clients that you're rendering the service. I know that it's a lot of extra work. I know that it's going to take extra time to get that done. However, it is vital that you are crossing your T's and dotting your I's to make sure that they have the information or have the benefit available to them. All clients could be different. Just because they have Blue Cross Blue Shield does not mean that they have all of that information or they have all of that on their account or the benefit available. So you need to check all the benefit plans. You need to check each individual client, asking insurance company, is telehealth a covered service under the plan? If they say yes, make sure that there's no stipulations surrounding that. There should not be at this time.
We have ran into that because we are offered telehealth prior to this, and we check with our payers quite often, and we know that some of them are included and some of them are not. However, whenever this happened, we called everybody again to say, okay, do we need to be, this is not covered. And actually, we've had quite great success with plans that did not cover telehealth, switching over and adding that as part of their plan. It is tedious, and it does take work and calling and working that out. But I think that that's excellent advice. So the verification of benefits, what you're telling me, doesn't change during this time. And actually, it sounds like it's a little bit more important.
Verification of benefits, in my opinion, and again, I've been doing this for quite some time, obviously contracting and credentialing is the foundation of your business. If you don't have that, it's very hard to get paid. Clients do not get the services that they need, at the benefit level that they need them. So if you're out of network, they're going to pay higher deductibles. They're going to have higher out of pocket. Obviously, that's not something that we want them to have to deal with during this time. We want to make it as stress-free as possible. We don't want to add any additional financial hardship. So I would make sure that my contract was in place, for the telehealth. I would make sure the verification of benefits has been completed. Very, very important. And I know everybody's very busy right now. Maybe you don't have the additional administrative staff to do that. And, I'll put a little plug in here if that's okay. Do have additional staff available right now to help, providers navigate through some of that. So if anybody needs help, they're welcome to reach out to me, and, we can definitely look at contracts quickly and figure out what needs to happen. Another thing that we want to make sure that we're doing is adding a consent for telehealth services to our paperwork. Getting that out to the clients if our paperwork doesn't include that information, and having them sign the form that states, that this is available service, and that they're understanding that it's going to be rendered this way due to the COVID-19 situation, and just have them sign off on that. They can create a free DocuSign account, and then they can just email that right back to your secure email.
Yeah, and we have a template on Practikat that's a specific telehealth informed consent if you want one that's already done that you can edit. However, you can create your own, but you need to make sure that every regulation is covered in that informed consent, and it's specific to telehealth. Wouldn't you agree?
I know you are very meticulous about those things. So if I were going to need one, that's where I'd go to get it, because I know you you've done your homework to make it correct.
Right. And then the verbal, we've heard a lot of people talk about a verbal agreement. A verbal is okay for temporary.
Yes, it is fine for temporary. However, moving forward, I would just recommend we have our documentation in place. One thing we want to make sure of is that when we get on the call, get on the meeting, we ask them to identify themselves, ask them to state their name, their date of birth. We also ask them to, basically consent to the treatment via telehealth. We also want to make sure that they know that if they need additional assistance during this situation, where would they go to get that assistance? So we want to be able to provide some type of, wherever you're located, just to let them know that if they need additional assistance, they feel like that they're, and I'm not clinical, so forgive me, they feel like that they are not healthy, that they are going to harm themselves or someone else, where would they go to get help?
Right. And I cover that in the course, and I cover
Okay.
that too, just in the group, just about crisis planning and from the
Yes.
beginning, because
Yeah.
you can't predict when that's going to happen.
You can't.
So the last question I have on my list is about getting paid. So are we anticipating any type of delay in payment from insurance payers during this time or anything like that?
No, not that I'm aware of. As long as it's what they consider a clean claim, that you have added all the information that is needed for them to understand it is a telehealth session. I have not seen any delays in payments.
Okay, well, that's really good news for a lot of us.
The main thing
So,
is to make sure the claim is clean when you submit it, so it doesn't get rejected for a modifier based on their requirements, their specific requirements.
and if it does get rejected, I know that that's something that typically our billers are excellent at, and that's something that you do, but it's not the end of the story always.
No, it isn't. I mean, basically what we need to do, in my opinion, if I were reviewing these claims, pull a report on a daily basis, give it, 3 business days to process if you're sending it electronically. Then go out to the portals and information, have someone that's looking at that on a daily basis to see if anything's rejecting. If it is, I would recommend, and I know that everybody's extreme, but you might even create a spreadsheet that would say, all your different payers, all the different plans under that payer. So create different worksheets for different insurance companies, add the codes that you're billing and the modifiers that you're billing, and then track that information and see if there's a pattern in regard to that. So that, if you ever get in a situation like this again, God forbid, and you need that information, kind of what patterns you're looking for to make sure they pay.
Okay. Well,
And I would just modify the claim and then resubmit it.
so there's one more question that I did find when I was looking over my list. So I told a little story there. So
Okay.
what about for services that usually are not rendered telehealth, like a case management? Do we need to also include the same modifiers required by payer for those codes as we would for therapy codes?
Yes, you definitely want to include the modifiers, because
Okay.
that lets them know that service was rendered. And I know there's some language around that, and right off the top of my head, I don't know what that language is for the GT or the 95 modifier. It's readily available, on the websites. So definitely that in the place of service is key to letting them understand how the service was rendered.
Okay, perfect. So
And
you're gonna go ahead.
I was just going to say, one other thing I want to make sure that everybody is doing is in their bookkeeping, make sure that if you have additional expenses surrounding this situation, that you code that differently, or you put something, some way, I don't know how, what all software people use, but say you're using QuickBooks, you would want to add an additional detail line to that code or to that expense, so people know how to pull that out if they have to submit a report for, say they want a small business loan, or say they're going to get federal, relief or state relief for some of the expenses they're incurring right now. Add that additional information into your accounting software so you can readily pull that report out. So what I'm saying is, if you had to get an additional chat room, because you're providing the service virtually, that would be an expense that you would want to make sure you flag and be able to pull out. If you have administrative staff that normally work 20 hours and all of a sudden they're working 40 hours because they're trying to work through verification of benefits or contracting or whatever the case may be, you would add that additional 20 hours, put that additional 20 hours or however many additional hours that they're doing on your payroll and separate that out. Because if someone has to take FMLA, things come into play. They have to be out because they're sick or they're taking care of a loved one that's sick. So make sure that you're tracking that information separately. Does that make sense?
Yes, and I have actually done that. So we've had to buy a couple pieces of equipment and some things to modify what we're doing. And I love that piece of advice because, and what you're saying is that that's not part of any of the stimulus things that are going on now. That's a separate conversation. That's part of whenever it comes down to tax season next year. There's things that are probably going to be available as a result of this, and you're just trying to help people stay organized. So if that is what happens, that's clearly identifiable.
Right. You want to make sure that any receipts that you have, typically what I do, folks, is rather than try to keep up with the receipt every time that I have a transaction in my account, I upload that receipt directly to that charge. That way you don't have to go back and try to find those receipts, that goes specifically with that. So attach the receipt to the charge in QuickBooks. I know some of the other softwares allow that as well, but I have to speak with that one because that's what I use. It just makes it so much easier if you have to track information down. It makes it so much easier when you're pulling out separate reports to distinctly identify that was a charge due to this situation.
Okay, perfect. So you're going to get us some things to kind of attach to this call
Yes,
to
ma'am.
share. And I'm going to share that information. If somebody wanted to get a hold of you, Kim, what's the best way for them to connect with you, whether it's a small amount of consulting or major help?
Well, I have a website. It's just practicnavigationsolutions.com. They can go there and book an appointment. They can call me directly, and I'll be glad to give you my number. It's 270-202-5157. I'll be glad to provide any additional assistance I can and discuss, consultation calls, things like that, anything that we can do right now to help, navigate through all of this.
And you can help specifically in Kentucky and in other states, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Wonderful. Well, if you all have any questions, you can contact me with the links that are attached to this, and we will get some additional information that is available to also include here with this video today. So if you have any questions, let Kim Beck from Practice Navigation Solutions or myself, Katie Englert, know, and we're working on getting resources that you need to get through this. Okay, have a great day.
Thank you. Bye.